On May 23rd, the Element of Inclusion podcast was 6 years old, and I'm going to share 6 outstanding episodes of the show so you can understand my motivation in supporting you. I'm Dr. Jonathan. I work with organizations to make them inclusive, and I'm on a mission to help 1 million people like you to make your workplace inclusive. Get your pen and paper ready because it's our birthday, and I want to share a little bit more about the man behind the mic. The Element of Inclusion is 6 years old. That is 6 years of informing and educating using applied research and thought leadership. That's 6 years of supporting you on your inclusion journey. And over 6 years, we've evolved to have 5 types of show. Book reviews, breakdowns, explainers, interviews, and of course, the opinion pieces like this, where I just tell you what I think. Every year we have a birthday episode just like this, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently this year. It's our 6th birthday, so I've picked 6 episodes of the show from the past year that shared a little bit about me, my beliefs, and my aspirations. Why? Because I talk a lot about research, I talk about books, I talk about organizations. What I don't do much is talk about myself. And do you know why? Because the focus of the show is you. But I'm also a pretty private person. I'm not one to post pictures of my private life. Pictures of my holidays, pictures of my family. That doesn't really sound like me. But I have been asked to share more about me, and I want to use this episode of the show to say that I have been sharing more about me, but I do it a little bit sparingly. So I'm going to use this show to make it a little bit more explicit for you. You hear me saying, I'm Dr. Jonathan, I'm on a mission, read this book, check out this article, try this tactic. I'm exaggerating just to make the point, but everything I'm about to say here is the stuff that sits above and below the stuff that happens every week. Okay, 6 years, 6 episodes, 6 themes, and I want you to tell me what you think these themes are. Message me directly at Jonathan, Jonathan, at elementafinclusion.com, and I'll have a special offer for you. And literally all I mean is pick 6 themes that you've identified, put it in a message, send it to me in an email, and then we'll talk. And to make it easier for me, put 6 birthday themes in the subject, then I'll know what you're talking about. Okay, so let's get into the first episode that I want to pick out of the 6, and that is why you need to be aware of your MacGuffin on your inclusion journey. In this show, I explain how a MacGuffin is a plot device that encourages people to take action. Whenever you think of a movie or a book, it's normally an object that everyone is pursuing in order to achieve a very particular goal. In the show, I give 5 examples, but here are 3. In The Lord of the Rings, the One Ring is the MacGuffin. In the Avengers movies, the Infinity Gauntlet is the MacGuffin. In Cinderella, the glass slipper is the MacGuffin. It's the one thing that everyone wants. I also explain in that show how a MacGuffin is a vehicle for something more important. Okay, so what's that got to do with inclusion? Well, my focus in that show was not to focus on the MacGuffins because it takes you away from your inclusion goals or compromises your values. Basically, I don't want you to get caught up chasing shiny objects if it doesn't get you the things you really want. Check out the show, I talk about it in a lot more detail. The second episode is 3 inclusive lessons from Stoic philosophy. People think of Stoicism as a philosophy. I prefer to think of it as a practice. I like Stoicism because it's practical, it's helped me in my personal life, and author Ryan Holiday says Stoics are struggling to find actionable answers to life's challenges. Can you see why I really enjoy this? I find it practically useful. In his book, Daily Stoic, he talks about 3 disciplines, and he draws attention to them as a framework. He's got the discipline of perception. This helps you to think critically, which is what we love on this podcast. He talks about the discipline of action. This helps you to use what you learn, put it into practice, actionable advice, another thing we love on this show. And the third one is discipline of will. This cultivates the will to actually act on what you've heard, what you've learned, what you want to do. We're all about that here, inspiring you to take action. As I said, this is something that's helped me a lot in my personal life. I gave tips on how it can help you in your professional life too. So make sure you check out that show. The third episode is the non-obvious reason why I'm so serious on this podcast. Now, that conversation about Stoicism may have felt like it was starting to get a little bit serious. And this podcast, this episode, it explains that posture. The whole thing was inspired by an influential podcaster who said that when they met me in person, they said I was really fun and exciting and all these really nice things, but it didn't always come across on the podcast. Now, I didn't take offense from any of that, but it did make me think about what we're doing here. And this is what I said on the show as well. And this is what I said to this person. This isn't a comedy podcast. This isn't a parody podcast. This show exists to inform and educate using applied research and thought leadership. And the truth is, on this show, some of the things we talk about are causing real harm to people on an everyday basis. So sometimes it does sound a little bit serious. Because I take you, your life, your career seriously. In that episode of the show, it was a little bit lighter, but it's useful, it's relevant, and it helps you to understand me and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. The fourth episode I want to talk about is all about books. And it's about what I learned reviewing 30 DEI books in 30 days. Now, as a regular member of our audience, you already know that we review a book here every month. You already know that we have a book club. You already know that in October 2022, I reviewed 30 books in 30 days using my 60-second review format. It went down really well, people really liked it, and in fact, I've got a 30-book breakdown that if you check out the show notes, you can get a summary of all of those 30 books together. One of the things I discussed in that episode of the podcast was that people broke the second rule of book club. Now, for those of you who have attended the Element of Inclusion book club, the second rule of book club is it's all about the book. When I reviewed 30 books in 30 days, some people made it about the author, some people made it about me, someone said that I was causing harm by purchasing books. Check out the show and make your own mind up. Now, the fifth episode of the podcast I want to talk about is less about me and more about you. There was a show called 5 Reasons Why This Show is Part of Your Continuing Professional Development. In that show, I explain how this podcast is really pod learning and how this show makes you an everyday leader, someone who's taking action to make your workplace more inclusive. I also spoke about my personal commitment to professional development, ongoing professional development, continuing professional development, CPD. It's something that I'm really serious about. And I want you to think of this podcast as being relevant to your continuing professional development. I completely consider this to be part of your CPD. If you've got a form at work asking you what you're doing to improve the workplace, to develop professionally, you should be noting down this podcast. I talk about that in the show. I talk a lot. In fact, look, I do all the talking here, but the truth is you're the star of the show. I am playing a supportive role in your inclusion journey. That's what this is. That's what all of this is. Okay, we're nearly there. The sixth and final episode of this podcast that I want to talk about was a favorite of mine, and I waited ages to make it. It's how Star Trek inspires our vision for an inclusive future. Now, this one means a lot to me, and it also shows how naive I am. In this show, I explain how I'm on a mission just like the characters of Star Trek. I talk about how the entire premise of that show is about a team of people who are on a mission to engage life that is different from them. I explain how I dream of a society where everyone can reach their potential. And the truth is, when I think about Star Trek, humans live in a world where everyone can perform, everyone can belong, everyone can reach their potential. That's how I think of inclusion. I also talk about Star Trek's optimistic view of the future. I spend a lot of time thinking about how positive the future can be for humans, for you, for me, for everyone, if we change some of our behaviors, if we create an inclusive workplace, an inclusive world. Now, even now, when I'm saying that out loud, I realize how naive that sounds. I realize how geeky that sounds. But I actually believe that stuff. All of that. That is genuinely how I think, how I believe. And this is what motivates me to get up every day in order to help you. It makes complete sense to me. I believe all of this stuff. And I have to. I'm on a mission to help 1 million people like you to make your workplace inclusive. So use what I share, join our book club, get our newsletter, talk to me about supporting you. This is the thing that makes me turn on the mic for the past 6 years. I need your support to keep going for another 6 years. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues, tell anyone whose values and aspirations are aligned with yours and mine. So let's wrap this up. What are the key messages here? 1. 6 years done, and there's more to come. 2, I'm your number 1 trusted advisor. And 3, help me to help more people like you. So what do you think? Who are you going to share this podcast with? Who are you going to share our book club with? Who are you going to share our book insights with? Get in touch or leave a message. I would love to hear from you. If you've learned something from today's show, then give us a 5-star review and a comment wherever you're listening to the podcast. It helps other people like you to find the show. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.